I got a button that said live.
And I'm muting. I'm going to remember to mute Facebook. And then pull that up.
Right.
Stephen, stay with me. Okay, we're almost there, y'all.
We live right now.
So why don't I see it?
It's on my phone.
Here we go. All right. If anybody has tuned in, thank you so much for being here. I'm figuring out some technical difficulties, but thank you. Getting this streaming thing down. Okay, there we go. And then pull Zoom back up. Y'all can be talking amongst yourselves while I'm doing this. Having a jolly artist time. Let's see.
Jolly artist time.
Jolly artist time.
I know what I need to do. Make these.
Sometimes we artists are introverted.
Oh, I can see it now. You are live.
Okay, good.
I see a lot of people here.
I'm so glad they're here. Okay, I think we got it. Oops, go back. That was a teaser. Woo! All right. All right, Stephen.
We good? Can everybody hear?
Well, I will in a minute. I'm making sure that we're all good before I start talking.
Okay.
The only issue that I'm having, Stephen, that I need your help from, can you mute that so I don't hear myself in the background?
Yes.
Is I need to be able to make sure I know what I need to do. I'm going to turn it on my phone. Okay. Thank you, everybody who is watching, and we're figuring this out. Here we go. And thank you to the beautiful artists who are hanging in there with me through this moment. We're figuring this out. I'm going to mute that. And thank you to the beautiful artists who are. You get double thanks. Through this moment. I just want this to go away.
It could be that another participant is watching on their Facebook too.
No, it's that I think it's Tara. It's that I need to make my phone sound off.
Yep.
So I was looking, but I just turned mine off, so you won't get any feedback.
I shared it too, and mine is turned all the way down.
I think, y'all, I think it's my phone because I'm trying to watch it on my phone so that I can see if there are comments.
Yeah.
But I think that what I'm just going to have to do is not worry about that. So
just turn off the volume. I mean, turn down the volume a whole lot.
So that I can. Okay. See, when I pull it up, the volume comes back on. That's not what I want. I want to be able to watch it without the volume. That's a bummer. 31 people are watching this moment. Thank you everybody for being here. Sorry we're starting very late. I'm a whole 8 minutes late. My name is Laura Bocquin. I work at the Montgomery Museum of Fine Arts in the education department. And I oversee our community engagement. And we are here today to talk with several artists from the Montgomery area and around about River region to discuss the current crisis in our nation that affects all of us. And this is a program, Artists and Activism, that we are hoping will help give spotlight to voices of the community that are traditionally ignored, by also showing through art the power of art and what we can do to educate others or even just bring awareness to others. I'm trying to make sure that what you can see is what I want you to see for the art so that we can focus on the art when we get to it. A quick thing I was going to say before we begin by sharing art from the artists who are here is just the idea. I know this is a very emotionally charged time and the art that we are going to be viewing today is very sensitive. Some of it might be very hard for a lot of the audience to view, but try to keep in mind the idea of coming at art with an open mind and an open heart to hear what the artists are saying through their work, and to let's just take this moment to be educated together, to be active in our own learning process for the future going forward. And since we are running late, I'm going to skip introducing everybody right now. And what I'm going to do is when your art piece comes up, if you will just take the time to say hi and speak on your work of art, if that's okay with all the artists. Is that good for everybody?
Sure.
Okay, awesome. All right. All right, Kevin.
All right, so I titled this piece, Dear Board of Education. That's B-O-R-E-D, Dear Board of Education. I titled it after a song that a hip hop artist or spoken word artist by the name of Propaganda, he did a spoken word piece that spoke to me. And at this time in 2014, I had interviewed a lot of my teacher friends, and they began to tell me about their experiences in the public school system. And so I'm not an educator myself. At the time, I was working for a youth development organization, and so I can somewhat relate. But this is a piece that kind of speaks to my frustration as a after-school program, coupled with the frustrations of a lot of the teachers that were at the time teaching in the Montgomery public school system. And so I'm gonna just kind of jump right into it. First of all, this piece celebrates the educator. As you see, the educator is there to your right, and she's wearing multiple hats, from educator to Santa Claus to referee to, law officer, police officer to a nurse. You just have many hats there that she's wearing, just celebrating who the educator is. And I have to usually say that up front because I've had some educators that didn't know the inspiration behind it, and they got offended thinking that we were attacking them or that I was attacking them, and I'm not. And so with that being said, you see she has a chain around her wrist because she's a slave to time, but she's also reaching for the clock. She's reaching for time, but it's almost 3 o'clock on this time clock, on this alarm clock, so she's running out of time. And right there up underneath her arm, you see a box of Band-Aids that represent the fact that we have have a broken system. And instead of, using a realistic strategy in order to fix a system that's been broken for over 50 years, we just put a Band-Aid on it. And of course, to the left on the desk, you see the state standard. I don't even have to go into detail explaining that. The teachers that I spoke with, that I did research with, they spoke a lot about the state standard. And so now you see a bunch of students sit in the classroom, and middle row, almost to the left, you see one light-skinned looking fella. That's the one white kid that represents the fact that the majority of our public school system is made up of African-American students. And even when you ride past a lot of our private schools in town, you'll see when they were established, and you'll see that a lot of them were established around the time of integration. And so the population, mainly deals with, majority Black and brown kids. And we know why that is. This is happening in our state. You see the Alabama flag, but it's also happening in our nation. But most importantly, the yellow that the students are wearing really doesn't represent the school uniforms. It represents the fact that everyone looks alike, because under this system, it's assumed that everyone learns the same and everyone doesn't. It assumes that everyone's the same and they don't. And so in the back, you see a window. Now, this window, of course, represents opportunity. I know that sounds cliche, but it represents opportunity. But what I attempted to do with this particular composition is show where the creativity lies. there's not enough room in the classroom for it. So creativity is literally out of the window. And I use that image with the 4 panes as a picture of creativity, because you will see in each individual pane is a different artistic technique. And so I used about 4 different artists to kind of express that. At the top left, you see Sarai's pointillism. You see sort of this Van Goghish kind of look to the top right. I'm no Van Gogh, so you probably didn't even pick up on that. And at the bottom 2 panes, we represent 2 unknown, not well-known African-American artists. I guess it's well known to some of us, Hale Woodruff and Edward Mitchell. And so literally I'm saying you have outside one image using 4 different artistic expressions. And I wanted somebody to be able to look at that and be like, man, that's creative. Because that pane, though those panes or that window represents the fact that creativity is out of the window. But you notice that I have a road with stones. My stuff is so literal, it ain't even funny. But I have a road with stones that represent the fact that there will be obstacles along the way. But there is a path that lead us to creativity and success. And by faith, I'm a Christian. And so I kind of use that sun not only as S-U-N, but the S-O-N. And what I'm communicating is, the path or the road that we follow that leads us to the sun, leads to, creativity and success. And so anyway, this whole piece at the time was an attack on the system, and it celebrated the educator. And it's an encouragement to stop treating our students like we are learning the same, because we don't. We need creativity in the classroom. We don't need to throw it out the window because of the state standards that were given to us that suggest that there's no room for it in the classroom. So that's about it. And this is the original is on a 42 by 48 canvas that I use.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Kevin. I've seen this piece and heard you discuss it before, but never to such length. It is really powerful and very eye-opening to hear such a detailed description. Do any of the other artists have anything they'd like to ask Kevin about this or share?
I have a little thing to say, which is I agree with you so much. And I feel like we need a new order of education completely. I'm all about it. I would love to talk about that more later.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
I feel bad because I've seen this piece so many times and I've heard you talk about it, but I did not realize that was 4 different perspectives in the frame, 4 different artistic styles in the frame of the window pane. I thought I was looking at that as one image all this time.
Yeah, well, you were supposed to look at it as one image, so I'm glad you did. But when you look closely, I did at least want people to see that it's 4 different, techniques that we use.
It's dope.
Thank you.
So that's good, man. Thank you.
All right, we're gonna move on to the next one. Milton.
All right, how y'all doing? I'm Milton Madison. This is Dexter in Bainbridge. This piece was created a couple of years ago when we had the 21 Dreams had the Roots and Wings exhibition. And part of my reasoning for doing it, I wanted to make sure that some of our lesser known heroes were focused on.
Yeah.
I know not to take away from any of the sacrifice or any of the blood, sweat, and tears that Rosa Parks or anybody during that time had experienced, but I was given a book by my dad, and I came to know who Claudette Colvin was. And she was one of the first people who got kicked off the bus during the bus boycott era. Well, that started the bus boycott era. I felt like it was important to kind of shine a light on her during that time, because you want kids to know that, you know, sometimes you have people that do great things at a young age. I think she was 16, maybe 17 when her issue came about and was brought up. But the reason that they didn't decide to go with her as the face for the movement is because, and not to slight her, but she was a dark-skinned young woman. She was, to what some believe to be problematic, from what I understand, because she was pregnant with a child from a married man. So the optics just didn't fit what they wanted at that time. So she actually wound up for a time living with Rosa Parks, and the case got filed and the information was shared, and they started building around her case when she got arrested. But there were others as well, but they started building around that. And so when Rosa Parks decided that she wasn't going to take it anymore, it wasn't just happenstance. It wasn't just coincidental. It was planned, plot, strategized, strategic. This is what we're going to do. They had already, you know, put together the things that they needed to do. They had already researched. They had already lined everything up. So when it was time to implement this and they did it, it was strategic enough to where, okay, from here on, everything we do is off the hinges of, you know, what this girl did. And like I said, 16, 17, that's pretty young. And that fire that she lashed out with the cops with, the thing that she said when she got arrested was, I know my rights. She was kicking and screaming, saying she knows her rights. And that heart, that passion ignited something that we see to this day playing out in our streets and our communities, to where that same fire for justice, or the lack thereof, it's why we're seeing people out doing what they're doing. The bus boycott movement lasted 381 days. And I'm sure the ramifications of that, you know, are still rippling now. A lot of people probably didn't commit to it because they couldn't, for whatever reasons, but a lot of people did. That changed the way they moved in the city. That brought attention to the movement because of what they decided they weren't going to do anymore. They weren't going to patronize a system that basically just treated us like dogs. And so if you think about that same ideology, I think right now, we have some of that going right now, but sometimes I think we may lack in the unification of everybody being on board, doing it in a way that it strategically affects the powers that be. Yeah. But I did this piece during that time, and I tried different methods of creativity that I had not used before. I'm usually a lot of detail in my artwork, and I just decided to kind of be a little bit looser. I did some image transfer, and some of the newspaper articles that are listed in this, they're transferred. They're not, I didn't paste them on. I did like a transfer. I found some Montgomery Advertiser headlines and things of that nature. So I enjoyed doing this piece, and it's only been shown maybe once or twice, but it means a lot to me, and especially for what's going on right now.
Thank you so much, Milton, for sharing that. Any of the artists want to chime in on the composition of this piece or the intent behind it?
I just found it interesting, Milton, when you said a lot of people committed to the movement and a lot of people couldn't, because the same thing still applies today. A lot of the suppression right now is people will be punished if they step out and say Black Lives Matter. the fact that jobs are holding that over people's heads is suppression.
I love the profile of the fountain, which I did not see at first, and the Capitol in the background.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted things to be kind of murky, kind of like in a dream sequence. I didn't want anything to stand out and be so stark, you know.
You don't really see the fountain at first, which is great.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, everybody. And Tori, thank you for making that comment also. We're going to move on to the next piece, which is Tori's.
So that piece is called Grandpa Charlie. And I've got it right here with me. That is oil on canvas. And that is just a photograph that I found in my grandmother's photo album. And I didn't see this picture until I was 20, 23, 24. And I paint all of my, I try to paint all of my pictures with vibrant colors because the system kind of sees us as this suppressed race, but we're so resilient. The fact that he could even smile in that picture, and I know that he was there in a time even before segregation. It's incredible to me that he was able to even pull off a smile for the photo. But I've just noticed that side of my family, they're always joking, they're always laughing, and so yeah, that's why I created that piece.
Thank you, Tori. And I'm just making a connection between, you've got that beautiful tapestry behind you, and then the vibrant colors in the background of the painting. I feel that same joy and spirit from you that you're talking about trying to portray through this portrait.
Yeah. I'm not as great of a talker as Milton and Kevin. So
Don't do that.
I'm not a great talker.
Your work speaks for itself.
It does.
Yeah.
It does.
Thank you.
It is okay to be able to get directly to the point and say what you need to say also, right? Everybody has their own way of talking, just like everybody has their own way of creating.
Right.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one more thing that I was going to say about the painting, and I almost forgot about this. One thing that I find interesting about this painting and the time that I found the picture is a lot of the Black community, we don't know where we came from. And so what I know about him is so minimal. And I think that that's something that, I don't know how I should put it, but maybe other people just don't think about for the Black community. They don't think about the fact that we don't really know where we came from. And it's a sense of not really knowing your whole identity.
That's the great thing about a posthumous portrait, is it really brings the person back to life.
Right. Yeah.
I think when I first met you, you were painting in acrylic, I think.
I don't think so. I don't really use acrylic. If I do use it, it's for a background to dry really, really fast. Mm-hmm. But I actually started painting in oil paint my freshman year of college.
Okay.
And I kind of never went back after that. I do oil paint. I mean, I do watercolor every now and then, and I'll do like collage as well. But I don't really dabble in acrylics all that well.
Yeah, so I thought the same thing. I thought the same thing at first, Tori. I remember asking you if you painted in acrylic, and I was heartbroken when you told me you painted in oil, because I was like, man, if she gets her acrylic to look like that, I have hope. Yeah.
What I like about the piece is, you know, not very often, and I know you kind of pointed this out a little bit, but not very often do we see like pieces from earlier times so bright and vivid. You know, so many things that we see in our past are so hurtful and hard, and you associate those types of experiences with darker colors, you know, so you can tell he's lived through something,
Right.
but at the same time, the vibrant colors behind him give off his perseverance and what he's endured, you know, regardless of, you know, the situations. You know, he's still got that bright, I see a bright spirit, aura around him with the colors that you created.
One of the things that I like here about this piece, Tori, is the way, just literally how you painted it there with the way the shoulders are melding into the background. It's almost like he's coming forward out of the past. And so that makes me, I'm resonating with your sadness, that loss of ancestry, I guess. And I'm seeing the background and the foreground kind of playing together a little bit with, you know, where am I coming from? And I like that his face comes further forward, but he's kind of stepping out of something that's, we're not sure.
Right. Right. And my fiance, I think he can trace his ancestry back to the year 1400. And in my head, I'm thinking, I can barely get to the year 1900.
Wow.
I can't get past my grandfather.
See? And that's so common in the Black community. It's so common.
It is.
Wow.
Yep.
My dad, my granddad, that's about it.
Yeah, same here.
And everybody was so, you know, some families are so separated that it's impossible. Some people have this piece of history. Some people have this piece of history. We didn't have documents. That some people didn't know how to write. Some people didn't know how to read. I actually, my grandfather on my mom's side, he had an ancestor that was a teacher in secrecy because they were slaves. And if they figured out that she was teaching, then they hunger. And so that, I mean, it was really like a cattle kind of thing. You didn't have an identity.
Right.
I'm glad you're giving him an identity.
Yeah, that is my goal with a lot of my ancestors, is to tell their story, and I know that a lot of the Black community around me, they'll be able to connect with that as well, because a lot of us have very similar stories when it comes to that.
Tori, thank you so much. I wanted to say before we move to the next piece that my sister has commented on Facebook. Steven's texted me, and she said that you're fantastic. That's coming from my sister, Alicia. And so I'm just sharing that because she's my sister.
Thank you.
All right, Madison Phelan.
Hello, everybody. I am famously horrible at titling paintings. I usually don't, just out of, I can't make up my mind. But I'll admit, during this current crisis that we're in, both crises that we're in, I struggled with how to respond. Being a somewhat representational painter, I was always trained to paint from life or paint from photographs. And the photographs, the images that we're seeing are so intense that it's a little overwhelming. So I've been doing much more writing than painting. But when the pandemic started, I started a new medium of gouache, which is not something that I've ever used before. It's an opaque watercolor. And I love working on paper. So I've been doing that daily in my watercolor sketchpad. And when this all happened, I was very torn as to what to do, because we find ourselves in the midst of a pandemic. We find ourselves in the midst of major tension at home, but we also find ourselves in the beginning of Pride Month. And being a member of the LGBT community, that's something that's very important. This is supposed to be a very happy time where we celebrate each other and we celebrate love. And we're not doing that right now. And I was thinking, how do I kind of put it all together in one? So I've always loved flags. I've painted flags. I've made flags before in college. And I always kind of go back to doing them. And I've always liked them because they're always powerful. Holding a flag is so important and such a strong thing to do. And I started thinking about the pride flag that was originally created by Gilbert Stuart in the 70s. The original flag, the red, orange, yellow, green, blue, and purple, that it did not mean anything concrete. It meant love and light and happiness and color. And that was the standard flag up until the 80s. And when we found ourselves like we do now in the midst of an epidemic with AIDS and so many people that were dying, a black band was added to the bottom of the pride flag to represent all of those that had died. And in many places, it's still there. And many people still fly the flag with the black band to represent those that died. And when the Black Lives Matter movement started a few years ago, a brown band was added. And for me, that's a symbol of solidarity between two communities, saying that we're here for you, we listen, we are listening, and we stand in solidarity with you. So I thought that the timing was right. I've never painted a pride flag before, so I thought that that would be a good experiment for me to do. And it was a first time really of painting something out of my head, which is not something that I do. I usually have to look at something to paint it. So that's what I did. And I've decided since this image that I did, I just posted it, has become very popular. I think I'm going to make prints and donate the proceeds to a local organization. Haven't decided which one. So if anyone has any ideas, I'd be more than welcome to hear it. But I have also decided that it's time to do more socially relevant work. I usually shy away from that sometimes, which is not something I'm proud of, but it's difficult again for me to do it because it's letting go of my predilections to paint from life, and painting from my mind is more, I think, expressive and more valuable to us at this time. I do believe that representational artists and painters, sculptors are the avatars of social change. We always have been, we always will be. You look at Goya, you look at Picasso with Guernica, you look at Faith Ringgold, you look at Keith Haring, you look at all these artists that took their work and injected it into social activism. And I think that's what we need to do. I think that we need to hear the call and step up. So this is my first step, and I do plan on making many more. So.
Thank you, Madison. Since you brought up that you will donate to an organization if you are selling prints, and you said it's unnamed and asked for suggestions, does anybody else in this conversation have any suggestions? Maybe Madison can start working some ideas.
King's Canvas.
Listen, I'm not going to be self-serving, but I take it.
I definitely think Montgomery Pride United and the Montgomery Bailout Fund. I think would be two places to at least start. So. Right. I've also never done prints before.
Really?
So never.
Okay. Hey, Madison, what are the dimensions on this one?
This, that one is actually just from my watercolor.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Okay. So it's 8.5 by 11.
Got you.
But yeah, I think it'd be fun to do something with. I believe that, our art is our weapon.
Right.
So.
I could see you scale some of those prints and make them really big and maybe you could write something on some of them. You know, there could be like a series of them where each print is its own print, but there may be some type of personal message, because you talked about you've been doing a lot of writing. Some of that you may have written, you may be able to write some of that, and that way it's a print, but it's making it an original at the same time. That might
there's writing underneath it, actually. That's something that I've been doing during this, is writing a lot and then painting over it. I think that's really, as artists, I think that's a very healthy exercise if you've never done it before.
That's really great. Thank you, Milton. I like that idea a lot. And I was also thinking, Madison, the idea of using this as a study. I mean, it's beautiful itself, but if you did like, you know, a larger, that bigger scale, Milton's talking about,
definitely,
in oils or whatever.
Definitely.
All right.
One more thing I do want to add real quick, not about this, but I think you look at so many cities across the country that are doing murals to commemorate this time that we're in. And I think it's time that the art community in Montgomery came together to do that.
Yes, I've been saying this forever now. I'm with you.
Yeah, I think we all are. We're just waiting on the right canvas.
Yeah. We need a wall that, you know, somebody will just let us go ham on without you know, restrictions, because a lot of the things that are going on around Montgomery where they want you to do art on it, there's so many restrictions, which keeps me from doing it, because I don't want that many restrictions.
There's the art community here has historically been very divided,
and conservative.
Yeah.
But and racially divided, and that's been very unfortunate. So I'm hoping that we can change that. So
on the topic of space for murals, we are hoping to have some space at the museum coming up. So keep your ears out. That's a little preview there. And just so you know, Madison, I heard from Angie that Alana Hagler has been experimenting with prints. And so she said talk to her if you need some tips. Will do. All right. Okay, Tori, you're up again.
I am. Oh, yes. Oh, I sent this to Laura like 45 minutes ago, I swear. So this piece, I did it in college, and not Professor Sartorius. But I did have a professor that did not like my art very much. Felt like anytime I did something more African, it was just negative. And for our senior year, we had to do a capstone, and we had to do a series of works. I chose to do a series of a cultural series, and I've been researching different tribes in Africa, mostly to just research and see what connected with me more, because like I mentioned on my earlier painting, you know, I don't know what part of Africa my family is from. And so I landed on this tribe, and this woman just, you know, carried the greens on her head like this, and I thought it was so beautiful. And so I painted it from that image. When I was in college, I did not have that background. I added that later, because I kind of didn't know where to go from there, because I was told that I used too much color at the time. But when I presented this in class, and Kevin, this kind of goes off of what you said too, especially with that window. Right. I was told that she didn't look poor enough.
Wow, seriously?
Yes. And I was so offended in that moment. And of course I got like a C on this piece.
Told you that?
Yeah, my art teacher told me that. Yeah. so that's just, we're talking about what's going on right now, and that is a part of what has been happening for years. I was belittled in front of the whole class because he didn't think that because she was from a tribe from Africa, she didn't look poor enough.
Wow. Okay.
And I got a C for it.
Man.
What
As
is work
an-
like?
As an educator, I would say that is 100% how to not be a teacher.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Well, I happen to know that you have a really strong work ethic because at one point you were my student, and I'm glad I wasn't the teacher that did that to you, because I would never think about that. It's terrible. And I think that you are amazing, and you just have such a wonderful work ethic, and I love seeing what you were doing, and very much enjoyed having you in class. So it's fun to see you as you're developing and bringing all your meaning forward.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah. Now, Professor Sartorius was an incredible teacher. I found a notebook from our class. I posted it on Facebook not too long ago, and you were inspiring. You took our art and you inspired us to get outside of our boxes. This person tried to keep me in a box. Complete opposite.
Sorry. We're all coming from such different places, and it's just really hard.
Yeah.
I'm glad that you've climbed out of that box, so it's wonderful. Yeah. Good. Stay out. stay in, out, whatever it is. Stay with. Stay with.
I would like to say before we go to the next piece too, Tori, that I think that's such a strong statement as a part of this conversation, of the idea of not being kept in a box, not having to, be a certain way because people think you're supposed to, because you look a certain way.
Yeah.
What
Absolutely.
size is it?
I'm so bad at sizes. Oh my goodness. I can't remember. It's like I have it. I'll show you. Better than I can.
Medium or large?
Yeah, it's big. It's pretty big.
Oh, wonderful.
It's nice.
Yeah.
It's a great piece.
Thank you.
The other ones. I want to see the rest of that series.
Oh yeah, I can post that later.
Please
Actually,
do.
that whole series, that whole cultural series that I did in college.
I like the background a lot.
Thank you.
What school did you go to, Tori?
What's that?
What school did you go to?
Huntingdon.
Okay.
And I had two really good art teachers, and my last art teacher it was such
I know
negative.
who your teacher was.
Yeah.
He shall remain nameless
Yeah.
Elimination.
for now.
For now.
Thank you, Tori.
No problem.
Tara.
Well, this piece, I've never shown this in public, actually. I've shown this to just a couple other people, and maybe if someone came to my studio, they would see it. This is one of 3 or 4 pieces that are a lot like this, and I created this probably before some of you were born, maybe almost 40 years ago, in the early 1980s or mid 1980s. I call it a Sacred Heart. I made it when I was in graduate school, and it is welded steel, and I welded this armature, the curved part of it, and then I pressed a very rough clay into that form, and then I welded these very sharp spikes onto it afterwards, and kind of singed the clay and torch fired the clay, and ended up with these objects that were very dangerous, actually, really, really, really dangerous. And I thought it was interesting that Madison Phelan just mentioned art, quote, "Art is our weapon," unquote, because these really, these pieces really were about vulnerability and protection. And we all go to some really dark places, and there are places where, I'm speaking in abstraction here, I realize, because this is non-representational specifically. I mean, it might recall certain plant forms perhaps, but today I wanted to stick with 3 topics, and the first topic relates to this piece, which is the topic of vulnerability and protection. And at the time when I made this, I was feeling both emotionally very vulnerable, but also physically vulnerable, because I was living in kind of a rough part of Brooklyn at the time. And when I traveled in the subways a lot, at night, especially coming up out of the subways, I felt very, very worried about who might be waiting up at the top. And I used to interlace my keys between my fingers, kind of just to sort of like, I'm going to make my aura get really big, and I'm going to protect myself. And I don't know, what is there. And then I started thinking that's really ironic, because it would do no good whatsoever. And that kind of translated into the studio. And what I found happening was making this piece, which would be like, well, you really want to protect yourself, you better make something that's really going to protect yourself. But then I started thinking, that's really about my heart. That's really about my emotions. That's really more about, because it's never something I ever carried with me. I never took it out. I barely can touch them. They're very sharp. But it was more about that feeling of how we hurt ourselves when we protect ourselves so much. And so I think that, getting our hearts out there, which I keep talking about, Montgomery is the city of love. I really have felt that lately. And we have a lot of troubles, but if we can admit to our vulnerability and the ways in which we protect ourselves, and yet acknowledge that and open ourselves up, I think that we have a lot of space for growth and connection. And I'll get on to the other 2 topics when it's my turn again. So.
Thank you, Tara. That's, I just think this piece is really interesting. Does anybody else in this group have any experience working with clay or doing welding?
Not successfully.
Yeah, I think I probably had the least experience out of any of us. I think, Tara, when I saw your live, I was fascinated about all of the stuff that you had done, just different mediums you work with. So I'm clueless about all of this, but I love it.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I had to do ceramics with Professor Sartorius, and I really enjoyed it. I did one of my favorite pieces. It's in my closet, but piece of it broke, so I'm not going to show that off. But I loved it. What's that?
It's a great piece.
Are you talking about the headdress?
Yes.
Yeah, I did a headdress in her class. I took an old trash can and I molded the clay around it to make the shape. And it's a really interesting medium to work in, because you've got to mold everything before it dries completely, but it also can't be too wet. And you've got to mold it perfectly so that it doesn't blow up in the kiln. And so I made a headdress, and I painted the front of it on the back of it. I kind of painted it to look more like deer skin almost. And I put all these quotes from chiefs and some of my ancestors, and just inspirational quotes.
Laura, you've always given me Louise Bourgeois vibes, and I love you for it.
Yay!
Oh, thank you. Thank you. That's very nice. Well, it's an interesting language when you get into these other materials. And I have more representational pieces, but I thought today I would definitely be starting from the gut, because this came from a dark place, and I there was some anger in my heart when I made it also, and I am no stranger to those feelings, and it's not something that I would necessarily advocate, but I think art as a way of releasing some of those ideas or getting them out there and acknowledging them is a big step in healing.
Were you planning on stabbing somebody with that if they came at you?
I actually, it occurred to me to have them in the studio in some strategic locations just in case. But as you can see, even there's a spike just poking into my hand there. The thing is that when you use a weapon like that, you could actually end up hurting yourself, you know, and that's kind of part of it. It's like, I could never grab that hard enough to actually throw it, but I might if I were super scared. But mostly it's just about the emotion of those feelings. And if I were to grip that, I'd be the one who would be hurt, not somebody else.
You know, when I think about it, I'm not for sure what, I think it's in the Hispanic culture where you see the heart with, I think maybe the thorns wrapped around.
Yes.
That's
Sacred Heart.
Yeah. That's kind of what it puts me in the mind of.
Yes, it's a twist on that.
Okay.
Thank you, Tara. Thank you, everybody, for sharing on that.
All right, y'all, I had to unmute myself. All right, so this piece, this is my wife's favorite piece. Now, skill-wise, I wasn't really concerned with it being anatomically correct. I wasn't concerned about it being scaled. I wanted to kind of, the words to kind of speak along with the imagery. A lot of work that I do that's non-commissioned work, I usually have like a red, white, and blue American theme. I'm always talking about just the history of our nation. And so you see, this is basically a dude that's dressed like Uncle Sam, a black dude that's dressed like Uncle Sam. And I took the tape portion, and the title of this is Shut Up. So like I said, a lot of my stuff is literal. I saw a post that someone had done of Muhammad Ali with the tape, with the lock on it. And I realized, I remembered how outspoken he was, how much of an activist Muhammad Ali was, right? And with this particular one, I did this one around the time that Kaepernick kneeled. And a lot of artists and people started speaking up, and they were basically being told to stay in their place. You know, yo, stick to acting, you're not a politician. You know, sports are your thing. You just need to stick to doing what you do. Stay in your lane. Don't speak out against anything. And this one, I feel like it kind of gives people a voice in a sense where you see the dude with the box, right? And it's a present. It's, it's the globe. He's offering this gift to the world, but he's being told, why offering this gift to the world, that we don't really want all of you. We don't want all of who you were created to be. And one of the reasons this was personal is because when I first started back doing art, I felt like I had no place, anywhere in Montgomery, dealing with any of the major art entities. And this was pre-Laura, pre-Angie, but even with MMFA, the first time I was at MMFA, it was through Tracer Howell, her Art is on Tap. Like, I felt like she's the one in Montgomery. When anyone asked me about art and how I got my started, besides my wife, Tracer Howell is my introduction into the art community. And that's when I met Milton. I met a bunch of folks during that time that I just didn't know exist. And now you saw all of these underground Black artists who also felt like they didn't have a voice. And between Tracy's, Artists on Tap, and Kalanji starting Flight of the Arts, and those two kind of showing how people should collab, that really gave us the voice that we needed to be able to speak and to be heard. And I was always paranoid when I would do Artists on Tap, because I would always have some controversy, because, I would enter something, I walk away from my piece and I heard white people got mad. I didn't care whether or not they got mad. I just wanted the opportunity to have a conversation with people if they wanted to have a conversation. But if they didn't, I didn't worry about it. And so I used to always ask Tracy, man, I got this piece this year. I need to show it to you before I submit it because I don't want to get you in trouble because I wasn't really used to this world. But she was like, Kevin, this is your art. You know, this is your voice. I want you to be able to be who you are. No one had ever treated me that way before. And so shout out to her because of that, she ended up doing something last year that allowed me to create more pieces like this, as well as other artists in the city. And it's funny that this is called Artists+Activism. And I think I just realized that, even though I think, Laura, you told me before, it just dawned on me that last year in 2019, she did Artivism. And so all of the art was just like this at Artivism. This was before, George Floyd. It was before all of that. So this is who I am. And I think she recognized that. And so I think she wanted to really give artists a platform for their voices to be heard instead of us continuously feeling like we were being silenced, because that's what we felt. And so there would be no King's Canvas without her, and that's why I made her my board chairwoman, because she really kind of catapulted me out into that world and provided a community for me through her Artists on Tap and Artivism, and with Kalonji's Flight of Art. So yeah, that's what this is. It's self-explanatory. And lastly, you see 12/15/91 written on this code. That's December 15th, 1791 is when the First Amendment was ratified. So, but I needed it to look like a prison number, because oftentimes we also feel like we're in bondage when we are told to shut up and when we are not allowed, our voices aren't allowed to be heard. So that's what's up.
What is interesting to me here, it's as though all in this list of all the things that people are saying to you or something they're super distasteful, but the very last one is F your opinions. And I almost feel like that's what he's saying. It's like, stop saying this to me.
Yeah, right.
It's almost like that's the voice that needs to come, not toward him, but out to the people who might be saying all the things above.
Right, because often, people don't really want to know your opinions, right? I think when you create art like this or any of the other social justice related stuff that I've done, if I'm allowed to have a conversation with people about it, I'm able to not only give historical facts, but I'm also able to express my emotions. I'm also able to express how I feel, whether you want to hear it or not. But when you are able to engage with me with my art and engage with the art, you kind of get a sense of where I'm coming from, and people are more willing to listen if you are expressing all of these thoughts and ideas and ideologies through your artwork. And so it's a tool for me. I love it. It's therapeutic, but it's also a tool. And so, like I said, I don't even think I would have been doing all of this if Tracy wouldn't have kind of encouraged me to continue to do it. And made me feel comfortable with not only doing it, but, kind of putting it out there for the world to see. So. Yeah.
I love how stylized it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Appreciate you.
I like the fact that right now, so many of these hashtags, the more something is happening, the more people that are being killed and beat, and the riots and all of the things that we're having that's happening in the last, I'm gonna say 10 years, because I associated with my daughter's birth. The more of them that happen, the more people you're actually getting to actually do contrary to these things. The actors are actually coming out and speaking. The sports athletes are actually speaking, and everybody is saying no more. We have to do more than just whatever the status quo is. So
right. And I'm gonna say this. I kind of got my phone over here and I glanced at Facebook. So I see Taurus man over here comment. Blake said, can you come in on the key in the hand? I forgot about that. Thank you, Blake. The key, realize he has a key in his hand, but he has, the tape with the lock on it. And so I'm communicating that, you know, when people are silencing us, we don't necessarily have to stand for it, because within us, we got the power to unlock ourselves. You know what I'm saying? We have to, you know, we can unlock the silence and we can speak out, you know, and it really doesn't matter who don't want to hear us speak. We just have to be bold enough, you know, to be able to unlock that and be able to open our mouths and to speak with whatever medium that is. It may be our voices, it may be our art, whatever the case may be. We don't have to have, during these days and age, we don't have to succumb to any of the bondage and the silencing that people attempt to do.
What's
I
so
love the way you express hopefulness in your work. Really wonderful. And you have it kind of subversively in there, so it makes people get to those conclusions.
Yeah.
But both of your pieces have that. And it's very empowering.
Okay.
What's so ironic too is I don't think that social media, they thought that it would take off the way it did and give us the voices that we kind of do have now. But I still do think that the system kind of wants us to shut up right now and get over it. Right. But no one's backing down right now. I think we're just over it. Right. And it's kind of giving us that extra oomph, like a voice that we needed in the past.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you, Kevin, for this piece.
All right, appreciate you.
All right, Milton.
Oh, wow.
The title of this is Don't Forget to Smile. I can't remember what the last death was that got my mind to envisioning this piece, but it was surrounded. It was started by something similar to what we're going through now. I remember my daughter saying something a few years ago. I think it was when Philando Castile and Eric Garner, and it was like three people that summer, and like 3 different marches, you know, were surrounded by those deaths. And my daughter said, "Dad, why are the police killing Black people?" And she was young, you know, and just in the midst of us watching and me and my wife talking about it and things of that nature, I didn't realize that she was taking it in like that, you know. And we had to talk to her about it, but I just started thinking about what this world looks like for children. You know, we came up and when we've seen things in our neighborhoods, most of us have seen different types of violence and amongst ourselves, and depending on where you are, interracial violence, racial violence.
Right.
But as far as the riots and things of that nature, I think Rodney King was probably the first one that I think I saw. Yeah. And we've heard rumors and seen some of the Watts riots and things of that nature, but my daughter's probably seen 5, 6 to where people are just out protesting, setting things on fire, you know, being combative, you know, against the systemic racism, face to face with the police. And it's almost kind of like we're revisiting the current time, is revisiting the 70s and the 60s when it was civil rights that we were marching for. Now it's almost like still civil rights, but more so like human rights. But we're still not being treated equal. So I kind of did this piece to kind of have the tie in the two visions that I had, one being our ancestors and what they died for, the sacrifices of them marching, the ones that were lynched, anybody that had done anything, and their souls are in those trees. If you can see in those trees, they're actually faces in those trees, and they're crying. The girl she represents the innocence of children, and not just a female, but she just represents the innocence of children. I think a lot of times we see little girls, and we look at them as pretty, prissy, and delicate things. So she represents the delicacy of children. She's got on the little schoolgirl, the little plaid dress, because we try to give our kids the best. And in my mind, for where I am right now, the private school education was what I perceived to be what I wanted to see her in as far as the uniform. So that uniform is supposed to be the representation of she's educated. She's got some books there. The Color Purple, Zora Neale Hurston, The Eyes of Watching God, and the Bible. I pondered over which books to give her, but those were some that I read that I think helped shape me. I didn't have any books to go off of from any female friends that would have been better to put there, but I thought that those kind of gave some good perspectives on all women have to go through. The AK is basically like it's protection, but there's a twofold thing with the gun. A lot of times, I think for me growing up, whenever we saw Black people, or whenever we were identified with Black people with a weapon, it was, oh, we must be committing some kind of crime, drive-by, or anything of that nature. When I came to Montgomery, I was met with a large number of white people that I met that they had their kids out hunting when they were 5 and 6 years old with rifles and guns. They were teaching them how to shoot weapons and be comfortable with weapons. And it was just like having a hammer in a toolbox. It was nothing more than a tool. But as you can see, it's a lot different when we have guns, the way that we're perceived. The men that were in Michigan because they didn't want to abide by the stay-at-home rules, coming out in public with weapons, marching with weapons. And I'm not saying that we can't, but you'll have a lot more scrutiny when Black people are walking around with guns, and whether or not, that's right or not, it's our rights. These are our rights, but when we exercise our rights, the perception's a lot different. So I want everybody to be comfortable, but at the same time, I don't understand why the discomfort when we're seen, with our weapons. But at the same time, what's the strongest weapon, the gun or the books, the education? So I created this piece to kind of start conversations about where we were, what we're doing, and, the way we're perceived. And she's got a stern look on her face, a serious look on her face, but a lot of times we expect girls to be a certain way. So the balloon is supposed to be an emoji to say, hey, don't forget to smile. That's a reminder. It was supposed to be tied around her finger, but it was a reminder for her, like, in all of this seriousness and drama that's going on in the world, don't forget to smile, so that's kind of sum it up. Sorry for being long-winded.
You do not have to apologize. We welcome that. And I think Kevin might have something to say. Was it your mic muted, Kevin?
No. I just said that's good. I didn't, yeah.
Milton, I so thoroughly, I was really looking forward to this particular piece. And I did not see the faces in the trees to begin with. So thank you for bringing our attention to that. That just takes it to a whole nother level. And this parallel between, like white children having guns, going hunting at an early age, which is very common practice. But the parallel between that being easily accepted, but seeing a Black child with a gun would be perceived much differently. Yeah, that's really powerful.
Man. So Milton, the first time we saw this one, was it at the Rosa Parks Museum at that exhibit, or was it something else?
I think it was with Tori. I mean, with Tracy at Artists on Tap, if I'm not
Oh,
mistaken.
okay,
Yeah,
cool.
when we did it at the museum, in the garden when they first opened the garden. That's the I worked on it for a while. When I first met Sunny, she let me come up to her spot when they had the spot upstairs, the galleries, the loft, and I worked on it. I sketched it, and it just took me a while to kind of bring it to life the way that I wanted to.
Yeah.
But I have intentions on doing a brother piece.
Hmm.
The brother piece actually was created first. I sketched it out in a sketchbook, and then I built this painting off of the sketch. But now I have to do another painting for the brother piece because that sketch was done years ago.
Man.
What size is it?
I'm like Tori now. It's I think it's 32 by 42, something like that.
Milton, what did you say to Tori? Small, medium, large?
Yeah, large. Extra large. Large to me. At that time, that was the biggest piece I had ever done. And I was pleased with how it came out.
As you should be. Speaking of, I mean, it's just really stunning. Is this something that you would consider making prints of, or is that just I feel like this would sell. People would want to buy that.
Well, I think Dr. Holloway purchased it and it's in his collection, but I've asked that I'll be able to show it after I sold it to him, and he's allowed me to display it, to show it somewhere else once. But I don't know how I feel about making prints now that it actually belongs to someone else's collection. But I have some smaller 11 by 17 prints that I sold prior to selling the original to him, but they don't do the original justice because the quality just wasn't what it should have been for a smaller print. But yeah, there are a few, maybe 5 of these floating around on 11 by 17.
Is it acrylic?
Yes. Yeah, I'm scared to go the oil way.
Oh, don't be.
I'm scared.
You know, I am also intimidated by oils. I kind of feel like I'd like us to have like a big paint party with this group.
I mean, y'all need to quit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm going to speak out for water media. I will speak up for that. I think oils are a pain in the neck. I do use them. I do, but you're just dealing with chemicals and it's just everywhere, but they are luscious. They're delicious. They're all mushy and they take a while to dry and you can go back in. I mean, it really is, it's wonderful. But if you're just trying to get your ideas out there and you want to do it pretty quickly, I think a water media is a wonderful way to go. Really easy to clean up too. No, not toxic.
It is chemicals too. I was serious about what I said on Local Artists Live. Don't put it down the sink, for real. It'll blow up.
And have good ventilation, and don't get those reds and yellows, especially if there's cadmium in them. Don't get those under your fingernails.
Oh, maybe that's what's wrong with me.
Yeah.
I love the way mineral spirits smell though, so I can inhale mineral spirits all day.
It's
Before we move to the next piece, I would like to say as a disclaimer, because Tara was talking about how delicious oils are, she meant the way they look. Don't eat them.
I'm more talking about the way they feel when they're very sensuous. They are. They're wonderful. They blend wonderfully. I love them. I mean, it's really is very attractive.
Milton, do you have anything else on this one?
One thing, if you're afraid of the chemicals, quote unquote, in oil paint, Liquin is a great alternative. It's a fast drying alkyd gel medium that makes your oil paint dry overnight.
Yeah.
No need for mineral spirits or Gamsol or anything. Just saying.
Thank you, Madison. Milton, do you have anything else on this piece before we move to the next one?
Nah, that's about it.
All right, Tori.
Oh, wow.
So this is one of my pieces from my cultural series from college. And because I got that negative critique in front of the whole class, I wanted to do more because I'm just that kind of person. So I wanted to show the beauty of the African culture. It's always displayed so negatively on the media. And the interesting thing about this piece, and should I show it, Laura?
Yeah, sure, honey.
Okay, I have it next to me. The interesting thing about this piece is it's all magazine strips.
Wow.
And it's all just magazine strips glued together. And I find it interesting because it is from like a newer magazine, but the culture is so, I don't know if I would say undeveloped. It's just different. It's just a different culture. And I don't find anything wrong with that. But I do find it interesting that here it's almost like people think that having money is happiness, but in this culture, it's not. And I'm that way too. I don't think that money measures happiness necessarily, and I think that has been a problem with like the founding of America. You have to think this way. You have to dress this way. You have to do this. You have to do this. And this piece kind of says to me, you don't have to do that, because this boy in this collage that I did is so content out. It's called In the Plains. And it just shows how content he is in the plains of Africa, taking care of his stock.
Yeah, fascinating.
I love collage.
Yeah, I do too.
I'm really so I was very taken with the image that you sent for this, but seeing the size of the original, I mean, that is just amazing.
Yeah,
it's all magazine strips.
Yeah, it's all magazine strips. I'll scoot back so you can get a better idea of how big it is, but it's pretty lengthy.
How long did it take you to gather all the strips to put together the image?
It actually didn't take very long. I probably worked out of 3 or 4 particular magazines. I don't know if you've noticed at all, but the magazines, their colors usually match up because of the print, the type of paper that it's printed on. So you can take an image of like the sky from another magazine and it's usually going to match. But I used about 3 or 4 magazines, but the skin, I wanted it to be a darker skinned little boy. I did work from an image, but like I said, I usually work from black and white, so I can just think of my own colors. And this part of the painting was actually, I printed it off because I wanted that brown to be really rich. And it is a map. I think, is it a map of Africa? I can't remember if this is a map of Africa, so don't quote me on that, but it might be.
I see the bottom part. Definitely the bottom part is.
Okay, yeah, it is.
Then maybe up at the top, the left-hand corner.
It is, yeah. That is the Africa continent.
Man.
Yeah.
That's just stunning, Tori. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I feel like we are all just taking the time to take this one in and look.
I'm blown away. I've never seen this one, Tori.
Really?
No, I haven't.
I actually have some more collages that I'm doing now. It's just I have about 10 pieces that I'm working on right now to get done, but I can't show any of them because they're all secret right now because I want to put them in shows and I don't want anybody to see them, but I am working on a collage right now.
Okay.
I enjoy the way collages feel after they're done. They nerve-wracking as hell when you're working on them. For me, when we were in the workshop with Milton, that the workshop that we had that time when you introduced us to Milton.
Milton Bones.
Yeah, he makes it look effortless.
Right.
Yeah.
And when we were down there trying to put together those collages to develop those pieces for the show, it was just.
It was hard for me.
It was hard, man, to cut all that up and then try to formulate an idea and to put it down. You know, first of all, you got to be okay, I guess, with cutting stuff. Because I like to keep magazines. I got like a chest full of Vibe magazines and Source magazines, and I got magazines everywhere. I don't want to cut my magazines up, so I have to deal with being okay with doing that. And I'm a hoarder.
I have a mixed media sketchbook at home where you can, it's really thick paper, you can do anything on it. So I love doing little collages of the painting. So I'll take the images that I'm painting from, cut them out and do the composition and then paint the collage. So paint from the collage. I've always felt it makes the painting stronger.
It's so interesting how many different ways you can do a collage, because I also noticed that Milton and Lynthia does this too. They'll cut out the actual subject and they'll make a whole painting out of it. And I am so crazy. I literally take my my knife, my expo knife, and I look for colors when I'm doing collages. Yeah. And I'll cut out itty bitty pieces and paste them together to make.
Yeah, this one it's super intricate. I can tell you put a lot of time into this one.
Yeah.
Well, and Tori, the implied depth that you have developed with exactly what you're talking about, you know, these how you're looking at color as opposed to objects. You're using the different colors to create the depth in the objects. I mean, it's just, fantastic.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And I think I asked you before, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and be okay with being uncomfortable. Are those horns? Explain what is he rubbing? Explain what he's doing.
I think he's just like connecting with the cattle, with the stock.
Okay.
That's what it looked like to me. Like I said, I did take it from an image, but this one didn't really have a description next to it. But I kind of like that because I could kind of come up with my own idea of what he was doing. But either way, he just looked so peaceful, and he doesn't, he's not dressed, but that also shows you how different cultures, sexualize things in that part of the world. Obviously, it's not a thing.
Thank you again, Tori. Before we go on to the next piece, I'm gonna just joke real fast with Milton that he likes magazines so much that he just has a stack of them right next to him. Oh, he was able to be like, I like magazines. Here they are.
You don't know the half of it.
Oh boy.
All right, Tara.
Oh, wow.
Well, I will be very brief with this piece. It's called Ritual Bath. It is actually it's ceramic and encaustic paint on a piece of plywood. And it's probably about 18 or 20 inches, maybe 24 high and 17 wide, something like that. And I drew this figure from a figure drawing class, actually, by bringing in a slab of clay and then carving it right on the spot. And then brought it back to the studio and kind of worked on more of the texture, refining what this figure meant to me. And then I fired it and glazed it and then applied it to the wood and then added the encaustic paint. And you probably can't get up super close to that, but where the hand touches the face to the right of that, and there are other parts too, using a heat gun. I must have this love of heat, to melt the wax and kind of get it to bubble and boil. And more than anything, this piece is, it represents an African-American woman, but it's more, to me, it represents a certain gratitude I have for beauty. And it's more of an emotional response to humanity. And that's all. I'll just leave it right there.
Does anybody have any comments they want to respond to with this for Tara?
I love it.
Hey, I would like to know what the size is.
It's about 17 inches wide and about 24 high.
Oh, wow.
Not super big.
Yeah,
you know.
yeah. Big enough.
I love it.
I do too.
Yeah, I love this piece. I do have a quick, do you have a kiln at home?
Well, I have a studio and I have a kiln in the studio. So yes, I do. I have access to a kiln during the pandemic, if that's the question. And otherwise.
That's good to know.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I mean, really, there are some, I'm a ceramic evangelist. I'll tell you, you just better watch out, because I mean, that's my original training was in clay. I think ceramics and clay are the most healing materials ever. And there is so much that can be said and done with them. And I love it. I love the material so much.
Ceramics does have a tendency to explode. Oil paint doesn't.
Not necessarily. You can light a good fire with that.
I wanted to give a shout out to Aman Siraj, a close friend of mine, when we were.
Oh, look at that.
Once again,
talking about ceramics, I do have a couple of pieces that me and my wife did in a class that she had. So she took me into that medium, and I had never done anything before, but that was my first piece of pottery. And
that's terrific.
Yeah, but I enjoyed it.
I'm very connected with mugs. I love mugs, and I love this piece. This is by a Minnesota potter, and this is a reference to barbed wire going around here that he uses. So I think that's kind of a neat thing. But clay is just great. But don't get me started. Let's move on to the subject. Someone else's subject.
I need to call out Kevin, because Kevin is holding on something he wants to say.
Sorry.
So bad.
I was just going back to what you were saying, Laura. He had the magazines to his left. Then he pulled out the ceramics.
Yeah, I know.
What else do you have in there that we need to know about?
I'm in my studio.
You are the most prepared out of all of us right now.
I got stuff everywhere, man. Yeah. But I love this piece. This is one of the pieces that when the aliens come and do some abducting, they're going to take this piece and it's going to tell a story. They're going to take this and add it to their gallery.
I'm pretty sure that every work we've seen so far will be one that will tell a story to future generations to come, aliens or human. Before we move on, I think we have about 3 works left. We're at 5:05. That is my fault for the technical issue at the beginning. So I'm just posing the question to the artists, and also if the audience members who are watching hopefully can hang in there. But artists, how do y'all all feel? You good to go a little bit longer?
I'm good.
I think we should run it out. Let's go.
Okay, well then here we go. All right, Kevin.
Okay. I don't know. I was next. All right. So.
Surprise.
So I think I entered this piece in one of the Artists on Tap events too. Back when Tracy used to have them at the Capital City Club. I remember a friend of mine. I won't call his name. You know, that particular night, man, I was just having a good time, just mingling with everyone. When I used to stand beside my work to interpret it. And a guy who knows me said, "Man, I can tell by looking at this that Kevin hates America." And the guy was like, "Man, you know Kevin. And I know Kevin. Kevin don't hate America. He's just talking about what happened." And I think at that point I realized, all right, I definitely need to keep doing this. So you see the preamble to the Constitution in the background, and you see our nation. And so the images that are actually placed on the nation it doesn't have anything to do with its geographical location. I'm just trying to tell the story of what happened. And of course, it's not the complete story, but this is often a story that people don't like to admit, right? And so this is like over 400 years of history right on this particular imagery, right? You have, and y'all can look at it later. I'm not going to point all of them out, but you have, the story of, the Trail of Tears, Native Americans having their land stolen, Hispanics getting paid unfair wages, a wall being built, school to prison pipeline, guy with his hands up with the police lights behind him. I don't know if any of you know about the city of Greenwood in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and we call it Black Wall Street. Some of the images that are on fire in the back, that's what that represents. So it's everything from pre-slavery to the Native American genocide to mass incarceration. And so at the end of the day, I would like to focus on the guy who's holding the gun because he represents that part of the country. You see, he has a $20 bill that's covering his mouth, right? Andrew Jackson is on a $20 bill who will forever be an enemy of our Native American brothers and sisters because of the Indian Removal Act, right? So his mouth is covered up with money, right? So it's time to be quiet because economics is involved. Through his ski mask, his eyes had to look because he actually sees what's going on. He has some old school headphones on his ear, and if you can trace the cord, it's plugged into the money, just spilling out of his coat pocket. Money also has blood on it. If you know anything about, I guess, money and I guess different time periods when they would change the face of our currency, you'll see that it's old money and new money coming out of his pocket. Naturally, the American flag theme again on his coat, but in the middle of his coat, you see just signs of the Confederate flag. Has a black collar on. Blue collar workers are usually people who, just to give a brief definition, just usually work with their hands, right? Stereotypically, white collar workers have office jobs, salary positions, but black collar workers participate in the legal trade of people, goods, or whatever, fill in the blanks. And around his neck, he has unjust scales, right? Because the playing fields aren't level, injustice is happening, so the scales are unbalanced. Then he has his KKK pin on, right? Has blood on his hands, and he has an M16. And so at the end of the day, I'm asking, who's the real gangster? And the title of this is "Make America Great Again" with the question mark at the end of it. And so, when that phrase first was popularized, a lot of us asked the question, okay, for us, when was it ever great? For the Native Americans, when was it ever great? We can think of a period post-Civil War during the time of Reconstruction that were 12 years, right? And during those 12 years, we had federal troops that enforced the rights of the freed slaves. And so during that time, we were voting, we were holding office. That was economic progression. I'm not saying that it was all good, but that was a lot of progression during that time. Like that was the civil rights movement. And so when President Hayes withdrew the troops from the South that enforced our 14th Amendment rights, 14th, 15th Amendment rights, racial terror came in. A racial terror group called the Ku Klux Klan came in. That's why I had a pin around his neck, the symbolism on his tie. They came in and, you know, great migration happened when people fled because they were in fear of their lives. And it literally set us back 100 years, right? So everything that happened with, you know, MLK, Medgar Evers, and all of those guys, and just our civil rights leaders during that time, sad to say, that never should have happened, because we should have been a lot further along than where we were then and now as a people, if for political reasons, President Hayes hadn't decided to remove the troops from the South that enforced our rights, because in came the Jim Crow backlash. In came not just slavery, but sharecropping, which was a modern day form of slavery that, you know, basically sent generations of African Americans into debt and still being subject to their masters because they had nowhere to go, couldn't find jobs. So sharecropping became the thing. And it's deeper than that. It's a lot more to it. But at the end of the day, that particular person represents the side of our nation that participated in illegal trade, that committed unjust acts against Africans who were living on the Western coast, as well as Africans and African Americans once they actually got here, and Native Americans and Hispanics, and just fill in the blank. So I can go on and on about this piece, y'all. I can spend an hour just breaking down each and every symbol, but I ain't got time for all that, and you don't either. So that's what it is. And at first, what I did is he didn't have a ski mask on, because the ski mask represent the fact that a robber is actually in place, right? I didn't want anybody to think, oh man, I'm talking about the white man per se. I am, but I'm not. That's not the point. The point is the fact that it's systemic. It's a system made up of people that oppress other people for the purpose of economic gain. And so I kind of wanted to hone in on that point. So make America great again, y'all.
And all lives matter.
Oh boy. Okay.
Yes. One thing that's really great about this, when it goes back to writing, you know, we're promised in the preamble of the Constitution a little domestic tranquility.
Yeah.
But as current events and history in general has taught us, it is only domestic tranquility for some.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
The gift and the curse of a lot of these pieces right now, you know, I don't know who's on live. I don't know who's watching, but for the people who need to see these messages and needs to be reached the most, you know, so that we could change and that we can invoke change and create change. And I fear that those people aren't tuned in right now to hear this message, to be swayed, because it just seems like it will be too easy that, you know, somebody's going to watch and be like, oh, and their mind's going to be changed with watching this live feed today. But I really hope and pray that in time, the pieces and the stories that our pieces tell will reach those who need to be reached. I watched a girl on an Instagram post the other day trying to convince her, a white girl trying to convince her parents that systemic racism was real, and the reason that people were rioting and protesting right now is because of the rage and the oppression and the pent up frustrations of 400 years of this. Mm-hmm. And they just couldn't buy into it, and they were going back and forth. It was like a 5-minute live that was sent, and she was really trying to tell them, hey, you guys are the problems, because you don't realize that this is what really is happening and why so many Black people and people of color are being hunted and assassinated, because it's been this way almost since the dawn of time, almost in America, you know.
Right. Yeah.
Milton, what I will respond with to what you were saying about the people who need this most are unfortunately probably not the ones tuned in. That my plan is to like blast this everywhere, take the recording and just like get it out there, you know. So maybe they're not watching now, maybe they'll stumble across it at the time that it'll reach their heart in the right way, you know.
And I also think that there are many different types of voices that can, and lots of styles of art. And I've seen some wonderful art lately that expresses a lot of the thoughts that we're expressing now, but that the idea of art is a catalyst for change. I think there's a lot more power to it than we may always or sometimes think. I think that we can leverage the art in directions that could help change. I really believe that.
Thank you, Tara, and thank you, Kevin, for this.
All right, you're welcome.
The breakdown of every aspect. As with everything you do, this is very powerful. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, Milton.
This piece is called Injustice. Just my fascination with the civil rights movement and just justice overall. You know, Dr. King said an injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And a lot of times, being from Birmingham, you see a lot of civil rights photos, and you see a lot of things where people were just willing to go up against the oppressor. And I came across this photo. It was from Dr. King's mugshot. And he had this look on his face. Like I would imagine he had been beat prior to the mugshot. That's just the way I feel about it. And he just had that look, like at that moment, he might have been like, fuck this nonviolent stuff. You know, that I don't even feel that way right now. And I know that that's not what he did, but that's how he looked. And I wanted to paint a picture that showed that level of frustration. But at the same time, this man sacrificed and died for the beliefs and ideology that we can change and overcome our oppressor, or what's going on right now with these nonviolent ideologies. And he believed it, and he took his knots, and he was killed ultimately because of what he was trying to do. And so that's the flag behind him. Those gunshots represent a lot of the Black lives and people who have died since then, and his feeling towards the system then and the system that we currently live in now. So that's my play on the American flag behind him. And just somewhat of a bloody background tied into the blood that was shed during those times in the civil rights movement and the current times still to this day. So it's kind of like a twofold piece, but I wanted it to have a lot of energy to it. And I wanted to try to incorporate that feel. If you all have ever seen this piece, he just had a scowl on his, he had a scowl. It wasn't a pretty picture if I had to interpret his feelings. He didn't look polished the way that he normally did. He always kind of had that look to him. He was very regal, very humble man in all of the images that I had seen. Seemed to be very charismatic, well spoken, but this day he had a different look on his face, and that's what I wanted to show in this piece.
I think this is another that we are so struck by. It's just taking the time to look and consider everything that you've put into this. The bullet holes as the stars, that really gets me, and it's very strong.
Amazing the visual power that happens when you change the color or drain the color out of the flag.
The other thing I really like about this piece is the crisscrossing of the vertical and horizontal lines, because we're getting the flag and the stripes, but we're also getting, or I'm getting also this sense of being caged, that there's the mesh work going on in the background. And so it's ambiguous and multi-meaning, I suppose, of both situations. I like that.
As a nonviolent proponent of nonviolence, and that's what he believed in, and seeking some of those ideologies from Gandhi, this piece, I wanted it to have some type of rage embodied in it, and I think that speaks to what a lot of people are feeling now. I don't know. I talked with a friend of mine, a coworker of mine today, about how many people have actually screamed at the top of their lungs, like in their car or in a room, when you feel emotionally, fulfilled or bottled up about something. And this is probably the closest piece that I painted that kind of has that emotion. But there are some more pieces that I want to paint that can bring that kind of emotion, that I can kind of try to represent visually that type of feeling. Like if you just had to scream at the top of your lungs, this is my representation of that.
Very powerful, Milton.
Yeah, and that's the first time I've heard you give that interpretation. First time I saw it, it was powerful, but just to kind of hear what all went into it, this perception of who King was and the emotion, and I guess the exhaustion and everything he must have felt in that moment, it kind of makes it come alive, along with the colors and the bullet holes. And so this is strong, man.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it.
I think, Milton, and I'm going to try to make sure I can say this the right way, I think what also adds to the power of this piece is that everyone likes Martin Luther King Jr., right? Everybody talks about how wonderful he is, or was. And people are even using him to say he wouldn't be approving of the protests and the riots. And I feel like this piece shows, it makes you consider, like Kevin was just saying, what was he really feeling? And I'm moved. Thank you.
That piece honestly makes me think of all of the history that's not taught in school.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah, every emotion that Black people have, it's in that painting. Like the fact that they don't talk about in school how they used to have N-word barbecues, and they don't talk about that in school, and they should.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're Black and you know that that's the history and all that they have to say in school was that, oh, Africans were brought over on slave ships. It was wrong. We're past that. We're not past that.
Yeah.
The
I
nation won't even let us get past.
Another part is that the reason that I had this piece presented the way that I presented is because you don't want, when you take in all of those visuals of the things that happened, the picnics and the lynchings and us at the bottom of a boat, all of these visions of things that actually happened. And outside of reading them in a book and you just closing your eyes and putting yourself in that place and having to actually say that this really happened and it not be something that's like a movie or something because we're watching it and it doesn't seem real. When you really start thinking about it, and then you see the reaction of the people in the streets, although you might not condone what some people might be doing, you got to understand the rage that comes behind some of these riots or some of these protests and things of that nature. You fed up. If you got a heart and you got compassion for your people, you got to understand the rage. Sometimes emotion can't be bottled up in a nice explanation and rationalized all the time. Sometimes that's what you get. And again, by no means am I condoning people losing their businesses and some of the other things that we've seen, you know, and I'm sure a lot of those things are debatable, or who's doing what and what the percentage of people is doing what, but it's emotion. It's raw emotion, and it's a boiling point, and it's just that's what it is right now, and it's hard to really explain what do you think it should look like versus what it actually is looking like. There's not a way to paint a pretty picture. Oh, well, we should be doing this, or you should be dealing with this pain like this. You can't tell me how bad my foot hurts when you step on it, you know.
Yeah.
Some people might say ouch, some people might say shit, you know. I mean, you can't tell the person what they should be feeling and how they should be responding to it. But I think some of us are being a little bit more critical than we should be to some of the things that we're seeing, but that's just my opinion, you know.
Well, we are happy you are sharing your opinion and your art. We're going to move on to our last slide, and Tara will let us know what's going on here.
Okay, well, remember I said that I had 3 parts to this day for me. Vulnerability and protection was the first one. Gratitude for beauty was the second one. And the third one is amplification of others' voices. And this is not my art at all. It's by a friend of mine named Celine Robertson. And I purposely left this up here. So if you want to see more of her work or make a comment on these pieces, you're more than welcome to. She did give me permission to use this. And of course, I want to check with her ahead of time. I met her in a ceramics class, working with the Alabama Clay Conference, and she and I roomed together up in Decatur when we went to the Clay Conference and had many, many heart-to-heart discussions. And this is her just the other day, with her standing there holding her own painting above her head, and there on the left is the close-up of the work. And because I am a teacher and because I have the honor to be able to know so many wonderful people who I think have so much to say and a lot more to say from their own experience than I do. I have other experiences I can definitely bring to bear, as you may have seen from the first piece I showed, but I really feel like this is my strength right now is being an advocate for others and to amplify the voices of people who have a lot more to say about everything that's going on. And I want to read what Celine wrote. There is a poison that has been brewing through generation upon generation, ingrained in the twisted systems and appointed powers that be. It is a potent and festering toxicity. It has many names and faces. Sometimes it maims slow, and sometimes it kills swift. It may be administered under the guise of love, but it has only known hate. No one has been left unmarred, no one. It is a stinking, sticking ichor boiling in our stomachs. It keeps bubbling to the surface. It will not be swallowed for a moment longer. If you do not hear, you will see. If you do not see, you will feel. I have no anger left, only resolve. Be of courage, you are not alone. And if you are able, see you in the streets.
That piece got to be featured with that piece. Whenever they show that portrait, that poem or that spoken word, that's got to be with it. That's epic.
It really is. And yeah. I don't know if she's watching. I invited her. She's amazing. She studied at Alabama State University and went down to Fort Lauderdale to get her degree in art therapy.
Did she write those words?
She did. And that's on her Instagram posted underneath this photo.
I just started following her.
Yeah, you too.
She's
I'm a kid.
She's a beautiful soul. I love her, and knowing Tori, I mean, I just feel like being a teacher is a process of opening your hand, helping things fly out, and I am committed to that process. No matter what's going on, it's just got to be. Art is powerful.
Well, and Tara, I feel like what you've just said there about being a teacher takes us full circle back to Kevin's first piece and that teacher wearing all those hats, you know? And
yes,
that's very poignant. Thank you.
And I'm looking for the new order of education in case anybody wants to have that conversation, because boy, does it have to change, and it's had to change years and years. It's time. That's where we're going to get to the heart.
True.
I am so thankful to every single one of you for being a part of this. And on the topic of having a conversation again, Tara, when we can. I know this was a little bit hard with the being a live stream, and you know, we've all seen the memes joking about that you spend most of your time in meetings right now saying sorry to other people because you keep talking when they're talking. I definitely felt that during this program, but I'm so thankful for each of you for taking the time to share your words and your art. And in the future, for more Artists+Activism, when we are able to get back to normal and be together in a space, we will be able to also have a audience with us who can ask questions, and hopefully we can reach the people that we want and need to reach. I'm gonna wrap it up, but not me. I want y'all to wrap it up. I was going into this and I was trying to think of what would be the best to make this program the best, to have it be the most successful. And I was talking with a friend of mine, and the conversation was, what would it look like for it to be successful? And I always focus so much on everybody being happy. I just was like, well, I just want everybody to be happy. And the response was, well, what if success is that everybody's voice is heard? And so for closing, I would love to have y'all have your voices heard with any final statement you want before we go. Kevin, you go first.
What? You have to choose me to go first?
Please.
Oh man. So
Unless you want your voice to be the last one heard, in which case I totally get that, and we could let you do that too.
Well, I'm not good with closing words of encouragement or anything like that.
Doesn't have to be encouraging. Speak from your heart, whatever you want to say right now.
Anything? Seriously? Yep. Okay.
Listen, Milton has cussed twice and I didn't say anything, so you know.
He didn't even flinch either. He don't care.
And I love it. Normally I'm the one who gets in trouble for letting things slide.
Yeah, I mean, I guess if I were to say anything like during this time, I would, as a creative, I would encourage people to continue to be creative and allow your voices to be heard through not only speaking audibly, but to speak truth to power, right? We have a lot of stuff going on in our nation. A lot of people are just now starting to realize how bad it is when a lot of us have known that it's always been like that. And so because of that, a lot of us have been getting a lot of phone calls from our friends the last couple of weeks, just asking us to help them process. And I think we're kind of tired of doing that with people. And so, during this time, I would really encourage people to just to do their due diligence, do their own research, connect with people who aren't as exhausted as some of us are in light of all of these events that's recently happened. And just try to find ways to speak truth to power and to truly be an ally and to truly be an advocate. And so, and I think ultimately, as time goes on, when more of us actually do that, I think, we can create a better world to live in. And so, I mean, I can say a lot about that, but, it's just rough times for everyone. You got COVID, and then you have, murders by the police and murders in our own communities, right? So there's a lot from all sides that we having to deal with, that we've been dealing with. And so it's time for people to stop being naive and realize that this is actually happening, right? And those who, can kind of sit silent and afford not to say anything because their livelihoods, friendships, whatever won't be impacted. I encourage you to get up out of that. And if you truly are the advocate and the ally that you say you are, do it. Even if that means you have to sacrifice some things, right? So anyway, I don't even know if that's what you wanted us to do, but that's what I had to say.
You said what you have to say, and that is what I wanted you to do.
That's what's up.
Speak whatever you wanted, and that is what you did.
Yeah.
All right. Madison Phelan, I'm calling on you next. You've been quiet for a while.
First off, I don't believe in saying goodbye. So, but I will say that I love all of y'all. I think y'all are all wonderful. It's impossible to process really what's been happening. We've been inundated over and over daily with horrible, horrible news. And I'm always, especially as visual people, it's, again, very difficult to interpret and visualize how we're all feeling. But I always go back to something that my grandmother always used to tell me. She was an artist herself. Art is your lighthouse in the storm and your sword on the battlefield. And I think that is very important right now. So I think if we're ever going to come together as an artistic community, I think now is the time. And I think now is the time to really make that dynamic work that we all know is there. We just have to dig deep and find it and ask ourselves tough questions and make it happen. So I think we can all do it.
Tori?
I guess what I would end with is I know that it's hard for some people to get out of their comfort zone right now, but if you just take yourself out of your own body and put your body in the community of the Black community, we've been out of our comfort zone for a long time, for hundreds of years now. It's been tough. And so I would just say do your part, and don't be in denial, and be receptive and listen. So that's all I really have to say.
Thank you, Tori. Tara?
I think I've had to do some soul searching and go back to the phrase "know thyself" and understand what it is I have to bring in a positive way to the situation, and lots of situations, all the situations that are going on. It's important for everyone to know where they're coming from and know their strengths, that they can bring who they are and who they aren't. And I use art as an escape so that I can stop thinking about it for a while sometimes as well. And I know that about me. I also know that I'm an introvert, so I'm not likely to go out and shout in streets. But I want to use my power and my abilities and education to help in any way I can with anybody. And I love all of y'all, by the way. And I want to thank you, Laura, especially for having the courage and the fear. I know that you faced some real questions as you were putting this together. And I think all of us are being careful and caring and open. And I've learned a lot about each of you today, and that counts for a whole lot. And I hope that other people who have been tuned in are listening and will continue to respond and make this community a wonderful community in Montgomery, especially, and that the ripples will go out from there. So.
Thank you, Tara. Before we get to Milton, I want to respond to what you said. So thank you for thanking me. In my fear of going into this was wanting, like I talked about, to make it the best that it could be, and being worried about maintaining responses and just wanting everybody to be happy. But I think that what is best is that if it's me being a little bit uncomfortable, but y'all getting your voices heard and the art being seen and hopefully reaching someone who needs to see it, then that is what we did this for. Milton, I wanted to have you go last to say our final closing, because I also wanted to use you as the plug, because you've got a Local Artist Live coming up. So the 5 artists who have been here today, 4 have previously been Local Artist Live featured artists for the Museum of Fine Arts. And next weekend, Cynthia Carana is going to be our featured artist for Local Artist Live. That's June 13th. And on June 27th, Milton Madison, who you have seen the art of and heard from today, will be our featured artist. And that is a program that takes place on Instagram, on the museum's account on Instagram. And so that's Milton on June 27th at 10 a.m. on Instagram. Okay, Milton, say what you want.
Thanks for the platform. First of all, it's therapeutic for me. I don't know about for everybody else. Hadn't had a lot of people to have discussions with. Hadn't done a lot of talking, been in the house. Well, me and my wife, we've talked a lot. The range of emotions that we all, myself included, have gone through, I can't really put it all into words. I mean, just anger, frustration, confusion, hopelessness, rage, sorrow. I mean, it's just so many different negative emotions. And a lot of people do thrive during this time in creating art. And unfortunately, I hadn't been able to create, which is even more frustrating because this is the time that you're supposed to have your voice as an artist to speak on injustices and do those things. And I guess I'm soaking it all in right now. I can't really explain what's going on. We've been hit with a couple of double whammies. It's been like a Mike Tyson combo, like in the video. You thought Mike was done for, and he still got it. America still got it. They hit us with some combos, and I'm just taking it in right now. And it's a lot, you know. I don't want to sound like a victim because, you know, blessed to be here, fortunate enough to be alive, got a job, got a healthy family, but it's a lot to take in. And I want to feel like things are going to get better. Right now, I can't say that I do, but I guess I'm going to try to be optimistic, and I am a man of faith. So regardless of what it seems right now, I got to convince myself that things will change for the better so that I could sell that to my daughter in some sense of credibility and believe it. But again, thanks for the opportunity. I enjoyed talking with you all. I enjoyed seeing the artwork and look forward to hopefully being able to see you guys in person soon.
I think we're all looking forward to that, right? Being able to actually hang out again. Yeah. Thank you again to everybody. I'm going to try to gracefully help us exit this live stream. You saw how ungracefully we entered it. So this is the part that I practiced that everybody watched a gazillion times on Facebook already. So let's see how I do it. If y'all, while I'm struggling, if y'all just want to like have a conversation and start having some fun, you know, or you can just stare at me while I do this. It could be really fun. Great.
I loved hearing what everyone had to say. I really appreciate it so much. So much great material.
I can do this.
You can do it.
I enjoyed it. Tori, did you paint that behind you?
Oh, the tapestry?
Yeah.
No, I didn't paint that one.
Okay. It kind of looks like what's behind Tara. It kind of puts in the mind of
that mandala.
Yeah.
I should tell you that's what I've been doing to. These are very recent. Looking at Islamic geometric design, where you just have to focus. It's kind of a meditation. It's a really interesting thing to do. I feel as though it's a vocabulary word where I'm going to be crouching to jump, but I don't know where I'm jumping. And I think what you were saying about you don't know what you're going to be doing next, that feeling of maybe not being ready to make art, but something's going on, you know, just like I'm delving into these kinds of pieces. There's a reason for that. I don't know why exactly. I've always been interested in those kind of patterns, but it will add up to something. So being uncertain, I think, is part of being an artist and part of that process too.
Y'all are being so kind, and I love listening to the conversation. Here's all y'all's art again that I put in the slideshow. How do I get out of this? I have Stephen on the phone again. I hope we can take this off the recording. I hope everyone stopped watching. If you were home watching this, stop watching. It is over.
Okay, they can just listen.
I got a feeling this is going to end abruptly in the middle of somebody talking like.
Yeah, because I finally figure out how to do it. Click on the Zoom app bar. Stephen, I've pulled up Zoom. Stephen, you're watching from home. I've pulled up Zoom and no, that's still that piece of what is going on? Please let me keep my job. Let's see. Stop live stream. Yay. Okay, bye for real.